and network costs are factored in. Josh Frydenberg is the Federal Minister for Energy and the Environment. He is yet to land a position within the government on whether they're going to adopt a clean energy target or not. This is one of the complaints of the states, that they want the federal government to act. And Daniel Andrews says that's why he's had to go it alone. But the Finkel review made it very clear, and the states all seem to agree with this, that this sort of ad hoc arrangement of different states having different targets is the last thing we need. It's the last thing industry needs when they're planning on where and whether to invest. I spoke to Josh Frydenberg a little earlier. Josh Frydenberg, thanks for your time. Seems to me there are two issues here. States going it alone and then the target itself that Victoria's legislating or wanting to legislate. Let's just start on this problem of states going it alone, the ad hoc situation we end up with there. Why is that such a problem and why do you think they're doing it?
Well, renewable investment should go to its most efficient location, but if states start competing against each other by offering big subsidies, then you'll get an inefficient allocation of resources. And what's happened here is that the Labor government in Victoria, in a bid to win Green votes and protect its left flank, has rejected a specific recommendation out of the Finkel report, which they signed on to just a few weeks ago, in favour of a nationally consistent energy policy. So this flies in the face of the explicit recommendations of Finkel, of what Victoria signed up to itself just a few weeks ago, and what is deemed to be best practice in order to get lower prices and a more stable system.
Well, that's true, but if we're to uphold Finkel, he also recommended a national clean energy target. Do you acknowledge at least part of the reason states might be doing this is because you haven't yet taken a decision on this?
I think that's a convenient excuse, David, for the states, because they've been talking about going it alone for some time. Indeed, South Australia has gone it alone with dramatic and terrible consequences for its own communities in terms of higher prices and a less stable system. So Victoria was talking about doing this even before Finkel had come down with his recommendations. Now, as you know, there were 50 Finkel recommendations. We adopted 49 of those and the states and the territories followed suit. The 50th is the clean energy target. We've only had the report a short period of time. It's a big step to go towards that policy pronouncement, and now we will consider it properly. But it is a policy to come in by 2020.
Will this put any further pressure on you to hurry up with a decision on this?
No, it won't, but it will reinforce the fact that the states are pursuing ideologically driven policies, not policies designed that are in the best interest of their consumers. You see, if Daniel Andrews was serious about getting lower prices for the people of Victoria, he would unlock the 40 years worth of gas resources he has under the ground but he's refusing to develop. That would have an immediate impact on lower prices. Now, Daniel Andrews, he also increased by 300% the royalties or the levies on those coal-fired generators in the Latrobe Valley, and we saw Hazelwood close, and he told the Victorian people that as a result of the closure of Hazelwood, their bills would only go up 85 cents a week or $44 a year. Well, since that time, Energy Australia and AGL have increased the bills for Victorians by more than $130, so no one can believe Daniel Andrews when he says that this will be better for prices. In fact, it will be to the contrary.
All right. Well, I get your point about the problem of states going it alone, and there have been many criticising that ad hoc situation. But the numbers itself, the 40% by 2025, is that a problem in your mind?
Well, I think without the necessary backup, that could be a big problem. The point about the clean energy target is that is technology neutral, i.e. it's looking for emissions reductions and investments across the board. It doesn't matter if it's in gas or coal with carbon capture and storage, or indeed in renewables with storage. But what Victoria has done is something different. They're talking about a reverse auction, putting the taxpayer on the hook for renewable energy only investments. That's ideology. That's not what's in the best interest of the environment, and it's certainly not what's in the best interests of jobs, investment and the Victorian economy.
But correct me if I'm wrong, the Finkel recommendation for a national clean energy target would see a 42% was the recommendation amount of renewable energy. I take your point about what you class as clean energy and whether that does include gas and clean coal and so on, but it would be in a 42% target.
Well, that is true, and what that was a national target, and indeed that's just a recommendation out of Finkel. It's not the federal government's policy, so it's important to point that out. But as you know, in South Australia, they're getting around 50% of their power today from renewable sources, and on any one day they may get 100% of their power from renewable sources. This is creating huge problems in the system. Now, Victoria only has about 16% renewables today, so to jump to 40% in, not by 2030, which is what Finkel was talking about, but by 2025, which is what Daniel Andrews is talking about, is a huge leap of faith, and ultimately it will sell out the jobs and the communities of the Latrobe Valley. But it will also have...
Will this hasten the closure of those remaining coal-fired generators in Latrobe Valley?
You'd have to expect so, absolutely. But this is where Daniel Andrews is being very tricky, and he's not being upfront with the people of Victoria. He's saying, that there won't be any coal-fired power stations that will close in the Latrobe Valley. Well, that accelerated investment in renewables only, on top of what he has done to hike the royalties for the coal-fired power stations in the Latrobe Valley, is bad news for those jobs. And we know what happens to the stability of system if you hasten the withdrawal of coal assets, as we saw particularly in South Australia with the closure of the Northern Power Station.
All right, so just finally to be clear on this, 40% renewable energy by 2025 in Victoria is dangerous for the reasons you've outlined, but a 42% national target by 2030 still might be okay.
No, that's not what I'm saying, David. I'm saying that Finkel, with his 0.6 baseline, talked about a 42% national target. What Victoria is doing is very different to Finkel. What Victoria is doing is a 2025 target. What they're doing is a renewables only target. And what they're doing is putting taxpayers on the hook by virtue of a reverse auction. And given the track record of the Andrews government, with its promises around Hazelwood, which didn't transpire, and now Victorians are paying the price, with its refusal to develop its gas reserves, and with its now explicit rejection of a recommendation of Finkel for a nationally consistent energy target, by, dare I say it, a recommendation that Bill Shorten and Mark Butler have also endorsed, is really bad policy and ultimately will be bad politics for them as well.
Josh Frydenberg, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, David.